Throughout the years, the brand ended up really struggling trying to cater to this audience full of manly men that like to do things like, I don't know, like boat and fish and stuff like that. Flash forward to the 2000s. Pabst sales ended up bottoming out at 1 million barrels. This is when they hired Neil Stewart. Stewart was the senior brand manager and was tasked with taking these 20 years of complete decline and turning them into a success. They were basically asking him to pull a 180. The crazy thing is he did the damn thing. He didn't necessarily do a lot to change the brand, but he did notice a ton of things and he was able to use that to the brand's advantage. Things got a little crazy in 2001 and 2002 because PBR distributors in Portland were reporting doubling sales every single month. Stewart recognized this. While he was there, he found out people basically drank PBR for 3 reasons. It was retro, cheap, and cool. Stewart was able to pull all these characteristics into a new persona for PBR. Executives didn't really notice this at the time, but when they defined their new audience as anti-corporate, anti-marketing, nostalgia-loving members of subcultures living in specific urban centers, what they were really trying to say was stereotypical hipster. They developed a specific marketing strategy for people that lived in cities kind of like Portland. One really cool thing that they did is they totally ditched traditional advertising. They were able to target things like dive bars and indie festivals. But the one thing that helped them really stand out was something that this specific group of people loved: free shit. They had so much free shit to give away. Basically, they gave out a bunch of swag at these places. But from 2007 to 2009, the recession hit. This pretty much squashed their entire marketing budget. Because they didn't really have any advertising anyway, because the hipsters didn't like it, this wasn't a huge deal, but they did need to tinker a little bit with how they were getting the swag to the people at the dive bars and the festivals. So in order to save money, they ended up hiring over 40 field marketing managers. In fact, hiring these 40 plus people all around the country to do this was actually even better for them because they were able to focus on really specific geographical nuances. From 2005 to 2010, operating profits ended up increasing 81%. But after 2010, this hipster lifestyle that they were really dependent on ended up trickling out of fashion. By 2014, PBR kind of saw this, so they decided to try to align themselves a little bit more with art and music. Because they already did marketing at some music festivals, they actually ended up creating an entire new one themselves. It was called Project Pabst. It started off in Portland and had over 15,000 people come. It only lasted till like 2017, but before it ended, it did expand to some cities like Denver, Atlanta, and Philly. But all this work just wasn't enough to keep PBR in the hands of young drinkers. In 2017, PBR was ranked 5th beer overall in the United States. And you would think this is pretty good, but just 1 year earlier, in 2016, they were 3rd overall. So the rank was slipping pretty fast. Since then, they've done some product innovation. In 2019, they released a hard coffee brand. I did try it, and it wasn't half bad in my opinion. It's not my number one, but it didn't suck. No, their hard seltzer that came out, that was pretty bad in my opinion. I also heard they came out with a whiskey. I have never tried that, but I think that's kind of cool. Circling back to that hard coffee, from July 2019 to July 2020, hard coffee actually had an 11,000% growth. And considering the amount of espresso martinis that I ended up making that year and the amount of Baileys and Kahlua I bought during quarantine, I think that's a pretty accurate number. Through the name changes and all the audience switches, PBR has had a really interesting history when it comes to branding. And who knows, maybe with all this product development, I'll start talking a little bit more about how good PBR tastes rather than just wearing their logo on an expensive, overpriced Urban Outfitters t-shirt. Thank you guys so much for sticking around and listening to the history of PBR. If you could like and subscribe, that's great. And feel free to leave any other brand you'd like us to cover down in the comments. Cheers.